For this class, you will need 2 blocks, a light resistance band. If you have handles, that works as well. Mine is a full loop, but one with handles works as well. I have a pretty lightweight dumbbell, and then a blanket or a pillow with your head. And just to kind of explain what it is that we're going to be doing tonight, it's the shoulder blade, which the shoulder blade are these 2 kind of hand-shaped or triangular-shaped bones that rest on your rib cage. And it's a joint. It's called the scapular thoracic joint, in case you're wondering. But like every other joint in the body, we don't want necessarily the joint to dislocate. Or in other words, we don't necessarily want our shoulder blade to move away from the rib cage. It will happen from time to time, and they are designed that way, but tonight's class is focused on scapular or shoulder blade stability. So we want that rib cage and that shoulder blade to kind of rest together. So throughout the class, if you imagine that your shoulder blade is stuck or gliding on your rib cage, and if you get lost throughout and you find that you're feeling a lot of sensation, like you're hanging out with your shoulder towards your ear, anything like that, if you just think of like semi-gluing your shoulder blade so that it can glide around your rib cage, you're going to have a better awareness or proprioceptive awareness of how the shoulder blade actually should stay connected to the rib cage, and it should move in all directions. So with that, we're going to start lying on our side. We're going to have a block. And I have a cork block, and they can be pretty intense for what we're doing. So I'm choosing to rest my blanket over my block. You can also choose to have the blanket to support your head. So with the side of your rib cage, and your rib cage is this whole section, right? So your rib cage is all the way up here and it's all the way down here. We're going to rest this bottom section of our rib cage over the block. So find the bottom of the rib cage and the bottom of the block. I'm going to bring them even and then recline over it. You can use your arm as a support for your head. And then the knees are going to bend out in front. So knees can be in line with your hips. This might be a little intense. So we're going to rock our ribs towards the ground. So now instead of on the side of the rib cage, you're going to feel like you're kind of a cross between the side and the front of the rib cage. And just let the head hang wherever. If you want to support it on your other arm, you can. The arm that's on top, I didn't say right or left, but the arm that's on top, you're going to stretch that arm straight out in line with your shoulder and come on to your fingertips. And just rest with the fingertips on the floor. And first, just start by consciously breathing into the side of your rib cage. And you may find as you hang out here a little longer, you can actually rest your head on the floor if it's not comfortable on that other arm. Start to walk the fingers a little further out in front of you. And then find your rib cage. We're not rolling the rib cage away from the floor. We're just shifting the rib cage back into the shoulder blade. So kind of pull it back instead of rolling out, if that makes sense. And feel how your shoulder blade sits on the side and the back of your rib cage. So keep kind of pushing the back of your rib cage into the front of your shoulder blade. And keep breathing into the rib cage side that's on the block. Keep moving the rib cage back into the shoulder blade and start to crawl the fingers up a little bit. Like you're going to go over your head, but we're not going over your head, but in the direction of over your head, just to get a slightly different angle. So maybe you walk the fingers 3 or 4 finger walks up. And then again, shift the rib cage back to support the front of your shoulder blade. And consciously take 3 or 4 breaths into the bottom rib cage, so breathing into the block. And feeling how that affects the rib cage that is in contact with the shoulder blade that you are walking. And then go the opposite direction. So start to walk it down and forward. And then shift the rib cage back into your shoulder blade and take 3 or 4 more breaths. We're still walking them forward too. So it's like you're getting a stretch. The shoulder blade is gliding on the outside of the rib cage, and the rib cage is gliding back into the front of the shoulder blade. Use that top hand to come into a seated position. And whichever leg was on top of the bottom knee, I'm just going to shift it behind you. And you're going to take your band. You can either double it up, or if that's too much, you can pull it single. Hands are slightly wider than shoulder blade. You're going to punch the fists forward and move the rib cage back. And then just go up and down a few times. Think of pulling the band slightly apart, but maybe close your eyes and see, can you keep your shoulder blades attached to your rib cage? So only lift as far up as you can keep the entire shoulder blade gliding down and up, and only take it as far down as you can glide it up. So we're going kind of slow so we feel more of that rib cage to shoulder blade connection. Good. And then take the band around your back, right in line with the tips of your shoulder blades, so the bottom tips of your shoulder blades. The hand that is closest to the floor, you can either place on the floor or on a block. The block's still there for me and it's hard to move, so I'm going to keep it on the block. The other arm stretches straight out to the side. And now you're going to roll that arm that is moving, so not attached to the block, is the elbow is straight, the palm is turned up. And as you roll, instead of thinking about the arm, start to think of rolling that side of your rib cage into the band. And the arm's not going too far up. It's never really going above shoulder height. I'm just thinking of rolling my rib cage and pushing it into the edge of the band. Good. Release that. And then we're going to switch the block, or you can just turn around. We're going to switch the block to the opposite side. So use your blanket either to soften the cushion for your rib cage, or use it for your head, whatever works for you. And then we're going to come down first on the side, so bottom part of the rib cage, feel it on the block. Knees are bent out in front of you. Maybe the head goes ahead and drops to the floor. Maybe you need to rest it on your arm first. You're going to rotate the ribs towards the block. So you're going to rotate the upper side of your ribs towards the block without shifting the hips. And then straight out in front of your shoulder, walk the top arm straight out in front of you. Be on your fingertips. And first, just notice where the ribs are on the block. And start to consciously breathe into your block. And as you breathe into the side of the rib cage that's resting on the block, notice what happens to the other side of the rib cage. And you may notice that one side might be less comfortable than the other side. This is my less comfortable side. And then without rolling the rib cage away from the block, you're going to move the rib cage into the front of the shoulder blade. And I hope that makes sense. There is a slight rolling away, but it's more of a moving the back of the rib cage to support the front of your shoulder blade. Continue to crawl your fingertips forward and take a few breaths here. So actively rolling the rib cage into the front of the shoulder blade. Continue to breathe into that bottom block. And if you find that you're resisting, try extending your exhale a little bit more. And then walk the fingers up. 3 or 4 finger walks up. So we're not going over the head, but in the direction of going over the head. And take 3 or 4 breaths in this position. So we're really starting to expand the rib cage. We're starting to feel that connection of how the shoulder blade rests on the side and the back of the rib cage. Good, and walk the fingers down and forward. So you want to get as much movement of the arm away or towards the wrist. And you want to lean or roll the rib cage as much into the front of the shoulder blade. And for so long, we've been told to always squeeze our shoulder blades together. And we've lost this ability to reach or protract the shoulder blades in the opposite direction, which is one thing that will destabilize that scapulothoracic joint. Good. Bring the hand out in front of you, press yourself up. That top leg is going to sit behind you. You're going to take your band. And this time we're going to do something slightly different. So hands are shoulder distance apart. Top of the band is resting in the palms of the hands. Grip the band and point the thumbs out. We're not squeezing the elbows in towards the ribs. Now we are squeezing the shoulder blades together as we open across the front of the chest. So pull with your thumbs out and feel each time the shoulder blades squeeze towards the spine, but you're not punching your chest forward. You're trying to continue to move the rib cage backwards. Good. And take the band again behind your back. You can either link it over your thumbs or link it over your hands. The hand that you're leaning towards rests either on the floor or the block. The other arm stretches straight out to the side, palm facing up. And as you roll, that hand goes towards the floor and then maybe in line with your shoulder. But we're really concentrating more of moving the rib cage on the arm that is free, moving the rib cage back into your band. Good. Remove the band. And we're going to come to lie on our bellies. Lisa, I see that you don't have a band. I'll try my best, but just have that sensation of always trying to move the rib cage back instead of flaring ribs forward. Okay. So we're going to rest lying on our bellies. Feet are about hip distance apart. Sorry, mat distance apart. Tuck your chin and rest the top of your forehead on the ground. Take your elbows out in line with your ears. And if you don't know where that is, we're going to do a little check. So turn your head and rest your head on your left ear. When you look straight out in front of you, you should be looking at your elbow crease. And then go to the other side and same thing. You should be looking straight at your elbow crease. Then turn your forehead back to the ground, tucking your chin towards your throat. Find the pinky edges of your hand and move your hand out in the direction of your pinky edges. Start to press through your pinkies and then through your elbows. So more weight on the hands and lower parts of your arms, so between the elbows and your wrist. And then without pushing further, start to lift, forehead stays on the ground, start to lift your chest away from the floor. Like your boobs should come completely off the floor. Forehead is still on the floor. And then let that go. You're going to lift your boobs off the floor and lower down. And notice each time you lift your nipples away from the floor, you're feeling the rib cage back into the front of the shoulder blades. And the next time you lift, stay there. And then keep lifting your chest away from the floor until your head lifts. Press through your pinkies again and through your elbows. Keep lifting the chest away from the floor. Turn your nose and point it to your right elbow crease. Turn your nose and turn it to your left elbow crease. Keep doing this. So turning the nose, one elbow crease to the other. Continue to lift your heart as far away from the floor as possible. And continue to press through your pinky and your outer wrist and outer elbows. Good. Lower down, turn your head to either side and shift your hips side to side. And so we're going to repeat this again. Really think of that idea of this container, your rib cage, being support for your shoulder blades. So you can almost think of it as like inflating a balloon to just let your shoulder blades rest on. So instead of sagging into your shoulders or dropping into your shoulders, you're thinking of lifting your rib cage into it. So turn your head to the floor.
This is very hard.
I know. Turn the pinky edges out slightly. Start to press through the pinkies, the wrist, and the elbows. Feel how that affects your shoulders. Then start to lift your heart away from the floor, lift your nipples away from the floor. Keep lifting until your head just lifts. Then find your pinkies, your wrist, and your elbows, and turn your head side to side. Keep lifting the chest, keep lifting the heart, keep lifting the nipples. Good. You're going to press into your hands, lift your elbows off the ground. and walk them in so they're more under your shoulders. And then bring them down so they are underneath your shoulders. Pinkies still turn out slightly. Allow everything to collapse. So allow your shoulders to collapse. Allow your head to collapse. Let everything go, feeling a stretch on the back of your neck. And keep your head heavy. Start to lift your heart away from the floor. Feel your shoulder or feel your rib cage start to lift into your shoulder blades. Then start to peel your lower belly off the floor. Lift your pubic bone off the floor. Lift your thighs off the floor and hold. Keep lifting the heart, the belly, and the pubic bone away from the floor. Press more through your pinky edges and your outer wrist. Good. Lower just the thighs. Lower just the pubic bone. Lower belly. Stretch nipples towards your thumbs. And bring your shoulder blades away from your ears. Move the rib cage back into the fronts of your shoulder blades. Look down between your elbows. Lift your lower belly. Lift your pubic bone. Lift your thighs. Maybe tuck your toes, lift up to elbow plank. Press through the pinky edges, wrist, and move your chest away from the floor, or move the rib cage into the fronts of your shoulder blades. Lower the knees, lower the thighs, lower the pubic bone. As you take the shoulder blades down the back, stretch your nipples forward and then move your rib cage back into the shoulder blades. Pinky edges of hands, wrists. Good. One more time. Lift your lower belly, look between your elbows. Lift your pubic bone, lift your thighs. Tuck your toes, lift your knees. Move the chest away from the floor or rib cage into your shoulder blades. Pinky edges, wrists. Drop the knees way down and then sit back into child's pose. Shift your hips side to side and think of painting circles. You can take your elbows a little wider so they're in line with your ears, but think of painting circles with your shoulder blades on your rib cage. And after you've gone that way a few times, shift and go the other way. Good. Come up to sit. If you are comfortable on your knees, sitting on a block, you can do that. Or if you're not comfortable on your knees, you can just sit on a block. But you do want to be in a position where you can keep your spine relatively neutral. So just to find kind of that subluxation of your shoulder blades, we're going to play with it a little bit. So I want you to flare your ribs as far away or far forward as you can, and just let your arms hang. Feel how your shoulder blades are not anywhere near your rib cage. And then go the opposite. So round your upper back and feel how your shoulder blades are now kind of more up towards your ears. So kind of just find that exaggeration of both. And just notice how your shoulder blades kind of feel doing this. And notice how your spine is moving a lot, right? Your shoulder blades are moving, but your shoulder blades are moving more because your spine is moving. Right. Now stand, find a nice long neutral spine. So you can think of crown of the head reaching up, making sure pelvis is in neutral, so sit bones are on the block. Almost think of like your rib cage sitting right over your pelvis, and grab a block, place it on your knees. Take the block between your hands like this. So on those short, narrow edges, the blades of your hand are going to grab the block. Take the block out in front of you. So now do the opposite. So the spine stays still and you reach the block as far forward as possible and then squeeze the shoulder blades together. So we noticed what it felt like to do this by moving the spine. Can you concentrate on keeping the spine as still as possible? And just roll the shoulder blades on the sides of the rib cage and then on the back of the rib cage. Good. Let them go. Shake them out. Reach both arms over your head. Keep your sit bones where they are and twist to the right. Reach both arms over your head and twist to the left. So just do that a few times. And now we're thinking of rotating the rib cage. Good. Just let the arms hang by your side. Let them be easy. Close your eyes. And just notice where your shoulder blades hang when we're not trying to put them in the right place. And bring your awareness to your lungs. In each inhalation, think of expanding your lungs with your breath in all directions. Good. So we're going to move the blocks out of the way. You can take them towards the front of your mat. We're going to come back to that lovely band. Sorry, Lisa. We're going to wrap the band around the bottom of the shoulder blades, right? So kind of in line with where the tips of my shoulder blades are. And then if I have a loop, I am looping it around the palms of my hands. If I have one with handles, I'm taking the hands and the handles. It might not be long. It might be too long. You might not be able to use the handles. You might have to grab bands. And we're going to come into a tabletop position. So palms of the hands on the ground. First, we're going to move normally through cat and cow. So just rounding as you exhale, feeling the full spine press into the band, feeling how that creates tension in the band. And then as you go into that cow or camel position, you feel how that tension really lessens on the band, like you're pulling away from it. And then start to minimize how much you move from one into the other. Find the band and just move in and out of the band until you find what you think is neutral. And then lift the rib cage into the band. Keep the palms on the ground. Now, can you move the shoulder blades towards the spine? And then on the sides of the spine. So just like we had the block and we were moving the shoulder blades to shift the shoulder blades forward and back, can you just move the shoulder blades? So the spine stays stiff and long as the shoulder blades go closer to the spine and then on the sides of the rib cage. And then find where you're pushing hard into the floor and you're lifting the rib cage into the band. We're gonna round tuck and lift our sit bones to find neutral in our low back.
Were we almost doing a scapular push-up almost? Like,
It's
is that the...
it's exactly what you're doing. Scapular
Okay,
push
thank
up.
you.
Yeah. So now you're going into that push away. Find neutral in your low back. If you have a band, grip it in your right hand and you're going to row. So that right elbow is going to come beside your rib cage, and then you're going to punch the fist down to the ground. If you don't have a band, you can do this with a weight. If you have a weight, but using the band, you want to feel that the tension around your rib cage doesn't change as you draw the elbow towards your side and then you punch the fist towards the floor. So in essence, you continue to push hard through the left hand that has remained on the ground. Good. Sit back and roll the shoulders. So we're going to go straight into the other side. So you can be on their hands, or if it's hard on your wrist, you can always come up onto your fist as well. So first find those scapular push-ups. Try to keep the awareness of the band on the back of your rib cage, like you're broadening the rib cage into the band the whole time. You're not flexing or extending the spine away or into the band. Instead, you're squeezing the shoulder blades towards the spine and then pushing the shoulder blades on the outside of your rib cage as you push the floor away. Then find neutral. Find neutral in your low back, and we're going to go into that row with the left elbow. All the while, you're pushing your right hand hard into the floor, trying to keep the tension or the awareness of the rib cage moving into the band the whole time. Notice when your rib cage starts to pull away from the band in any area, and see if you can keep that awareness of the rib cage kind of keeping the band still. Good. Take a break. And so we're going to take the band back around your rib cage. We're going to step your right leg forward to the front edge of your mat. If you have loops, take the bands around the palms of your hands. If you have handles, you could probably use the handles for this. You're going to take the arms straight out in front of you, and you're going to move the rib cage back into the band. The front knee is your right knee. You're going to rotate that right arm open or back towards your back foot. And as you do, move the left side of your rib cage into the band. Come back to center. So we're going to go open 5 to 8 times. Each time you rotate open, think of moving the left side of your rib cage into the band that's underneath your arm. Do 2 more. Good. Switch legs. It's a time that I wish I had handles. This band is getting really uncomfortable in the webs of my thumbs. And so bring the band back into the same location. Left knee is forward. We're going to stretch the arms straight out in front of us, move the rib cage back into the band, And then the left arm is going to reach behind. And as you twist, move the right side of your rib cage right under your armpit into the band. So we're keeping the connection of the shoulder blades on the rib cage instead of opening and feeling the band come off the body. Let's do 3 more. 2 and 1. Good. Release the band. And we're going to come down onto our backs. So allowing the shoulders to relax for a minute. Stretch them out wide, either T to the body, or you can cactus your arms, whatever is more comfortable. Bend both knees in towards your chest and allow both knees to fall off to the right. Try to keep your right elbow on the ground and melt the right shoulder blade towards the ground. Start to find your rib cage and think of rolling your rib cage towards the floor behind you. It won't go to the floor, but move it in that direction. Draw your knees through center. Keep your left arm heavy on the ground as you drop your knees to the right. Try to allow the shoulder blade to fall heavy towards the floor. It might not get there, but in the direction. And to help assist this, think of rolling the left side of your rib cage towards the floor behind you. Good. Bring the feet back to center. Should have told you to grab your blocks before, but if you don't have them, grab your blocks. We're going to rest the blocks on the palms of our hands. So I'm not holding the blocks with the fingers. I'm allowing my fingers to all be together, and the blocks are resting on the palms of my hands. Elbows are straight, wrists are above my shoulders. So the same thing that we did when we were seated, we're going to push the blocks up towards the ceiling a little further as we move the spine, the upper spine towards the floor, the rib cage towards the floor. And now take the shoulder blades and think of them resting flat on the floor. Push the hands up towards the sky and then sink the shoulder blades towards the floor. So a few more times, just feeling that protraction, that pushing towards the ceiling, and then retraction, shoulder blades flat on the floor, closer to the spine. So just feel how they move. And then take your feet up. So heels, ankles flexed, knees over hips, and do it a few times here. See, as you take the feet off the ground, can you continue to keep the spine in neutral? So notice if the ribs start to flare away from the floor at any time. And then continue to push the right hand up towards the floor, bend the left elbow and tap the elbow to the ground. Start to rock your whole body towards the left as you push the right hand up towards the sky. Roll back onto the ground, straighten your left arm. Bend your right elbow to the ground, let it rest on the floor. Push the left hand up towards the ceiling as you rock halfway to the left. Roll back onto the floor, straighten right, bend left, rock. So your whole body is rocking and rolling as one unit. The hand that's straight or the elbow that's straight, that hand pushes up towards the sky as you roll onto your side. So we're using a little core stability to find that entire body rock as one unit. So the head, the shoulder moves as one, the pelvis all move as one. Good. We're going to rest the block in the left hand on the floor. Take your left arm out to the side. Bend both knees. We're going to straighten the left arm or left leg to the ground. Straighten the right leg up towards the sky. Start to roll onto your left side and push the block up towards the sky. So you're resting entirely on the left side of your body. And if you look up at the block, you'll see that the wrist is directly above your right shoulder. Keep the block where it is and roll back onto your back. Good. Do this a few more times. So as you roll onto your left side, your right leg straightens and your right hand pushes straight up towards the sky. It's called an arm bar. Good. Take a break and watch for a second. So we're going to start to connect our lower shoulder to our upper shoulder. So we're going to start to rock up onto our elbow. When we do that, I'm going to show this from the side. There is a tendency to drop into this. Do you see how my shoulder is in front of my elbow and in front of my collarbone? We have destabilized this shoulder by shoving the shoulder forward. What we want is centration, right? So if I just push it back, then I have a straight line from my elbow to my shoulder. We're going to have a block in this upper hand. So it'll go shoulder to upper arm. I have to rotate this, my chest, slightly towards the thumb on the bottom, right? So if I have chest aimed towards the sky, I'm going to decentrate my shoulder and shove it forward. And now my shoulder is going to come to my ear. Everything is destabilized. So if I simply push it back, I can find that line of energy that finds very stabilizing. When we were on our belly and we push through our pinky and our wrist, we can do that here too. And you'll feel even more stability across that line. So start lying on your back, block in the palm of your right hand, knees above your hips, left arm out to the side, not T to the body, but let's say 45 degrees down. So if this is 90 and this is 0, halfway in between is 45. So push the block up towards the sky. You're going to start to roll onto your left side and come up onto your left elbow. Pause here. Notice where the shoulder is. Push it back in place. Pinky, wrist. Look down at your wrist. Look down at your shoulder. And then look up at the block. Good. Push the rib cage into the shoulder blade to roll back down. Hand at 45, roll up. So each time we come up, we want to find that centration and then look up at the block to roll back down. Let's do 2 more. Rock up, chest towards the thumb, and then chin towards the block. Roll back down. 45. Chest towards the thumb, then chin towards the block. Roll back down. 1 more time, stay up. Chest towards the thumb, look up towards your block, and then bend the elbow down to tap your rib, and then straighten. Do that a couple of times. Continue to aim your chest towards the thumb. Continue to press to the pinky and the wrist. And continue to move your rib cage back into your left shoulder blade. Straighten the arm, bend the arm, and come up. So we're going to come now. You're going to kneel on your left knee and take your right knee out to the side. Toes tucked under is fine, like so. But you can also point. But your toes are basically behind your knee. Take the block back up over. So now bicep beside your ear. You're going to shift your hip back towards your left heel, plant your hand and look up at your block. And then come up and chest forward. So hand points right inside of your knee and then turn to face forward. Tap, hip goes back in space and then forward. Each time you twist and bring your hand to the ground, look up at the block. Good. One more time. Come up. This left foot is going to come behind you as you square towards your front leg. Bring the block out in front of your chest. Tilt forward, tuck your back toe under. Lift the back knee and step forward into a chair pose. Bring the block out in front of you. Grab it on either side of the block. So we're in that chair pose. Take the block over your head and down to touch your knees. So the whole time you're doing this, move the rib cage back in space. Feel the shoulder blades glide up and stay connected to the rib cage. Take it straight out in front of you. Step the left leg back, lower down. Swing the foot back behind you. Take the block out to the side, so in line with your left knee. Same thing, we want to centrate the shoulder. If you want to use your hand there to make sure that you don't pop it forward, push the block away, straighten your right leg. If you can keep it back, arm stretches over your head. Good. Reach through the top arm, come up, hands to the ground, and come back onto your back. I'm going to turn around so you can see from this side. So now we're holding the block in the left hand. Right hand is down to that, well, for now it's 90 degrees. We're going to straighten the right leg, bend the right knee towards the chest and to lift the foot off the ground, then straighten the left leg. As you roll onto your right side, push the block up towards the sky and then roll back onto your back. You can bend the knee as you bring it in, but as you roll onto your right side, straighten that left leg out in front of you. Each time really pushing the block up towards the sky. Your head can continue to look at the block if that's comfortable on your neck. But basically, the block's not really moving forward or back. It's just moving closer to the ceiling and then closer to your shoulder as you roll back onto your back. Good. Come onto your back. Bend both knees and take your hand now down to that 45 degrees. We're going to roll up into that side elbow lift, elbow prop. Both knees rock to the right. As you do, left hand presses up, prop on your elbow, pause. Shine your chest towards your right thumb. Look at your shoulder. Is it stacked over your right elbow? And then look up at the block. Find that line of energy. And then we're going to roll in and out of this several times. Each time you roll up, think pinky wrist. So feeling how that awareness of pressing into the pinky edge and your wrist helps to send that shoulder back into centration and stabilize the shoulder blade. Chest rotates towards the thumb on the ground. Chin rotates or nose rotates up towards the block. Good. Next time you come up, hold. Good. We're going to take the block down. And then we're going to come up however you want into that half kneeling position. Open. And I know I forgot the elbow thing. We'll do it here. So instead of doing it on the way that we did it, we can just do it here. Slide it out, slide it in, slide it out.
I'm sorry, right knee's bent like at a 90 degree.
Huh?
Is the right
knee? Yeah, it's my left knee, but yeah.
Is it our right though, or is it our left?
It should be your left.
Okay.
Which we already did. Yep. And then take the block straight up. So right hand's going to come slightly inside of right knee as you turn to look up at the block. And then come up right, bicep to ear. Tap down, hips go back, come up, hips come forward. And Lisa, it doesn't matter. If you want it less than 90 degrees, this is more about the shoulder than it is the knees. It's not bad to have the knee more or less than 90 degrees. Good. One more. Then lift up. Bring the block out in front as you turn towards your front knee, your left knee. This time we're going to take the block behind us. Barbara did it again. Tuck the back toe under, hinge forward, lift the block off of your hip, and then step forward into that chair pose. So you may or may not be able to hold the sides of the block. You could hold the block on the palms of your hands. And then instead of flaring the ribs forward, move the ribs back into the shoulder blades and just pulse. Block away from your hips a few more times. Barbara, you got the time wrong again. I was wondering where you were. Bring the block out in front of you again. Bring it out in front of you. Step your right leg back. Slowly lower the knee to the ground. And then we're going to take both hands onto the blocks. So have them on the long, narrow edges of the blocks. Shift the knees back. So you're in a knee plank. Shoulders are above your wrists, or wrists can be slightly in front of your shoulders. Find that scapular push up here. So allow the ribs to drop away from the shoulder blades and then lift the shoulder blades or the ribs into the shoulder blades. And then push away. Keep lifting the rib cage into the shoulder blades and bend your elbows back as you reach your chest between the blocks. So we're going to do 5 to 8 push-ups. But think of not letting the rib cage move away from the fronts of the shoulder blades. When you're done, you're done. You can tuck the toes under, lift the knees, walk the feet forward, and come into a downward facing dog with your hands on the blocks. Good. Lower the knees to the ground. Keep your hands on your blocks and reach the hips back into a child's pose with your hands lifted. Or elevated. They're not lifted. They're still sitting on the blocks. You're not lifting them off the blocks. And rest your forehead on the hands and just shift your hips side to side. See if you can think of painting those circles with the fronts of your shoulder blades where they attach to the rib cage again. And then come to a seated position, either on your knees or on a block, or you can sit cross-legged as well. So just for a little stretch, take your arm across your chest, link it in the elbow crease and pull to the side. And see if you can move your rib cage more into the front of your shoulder blade. And switch arms. Take your arms wide. Cross your right arm over your left arm. Bend your elbows and take the palm of your right hand into the palm, or the fingers of your right hand into the palm of your left. Move your rib cage back as you lift your elbows up to maybe shoulder height. Keep lifting elbows up as you start to round your upper back. You can reach your fingers forward. Good. Come all the way up. Unbind, interlace your fingers behind your back and lift your fists away from your hips. Take your arms wide again. This time cross right elbow over top of left, left fingertips in the palm of the right. Lift the elbow shoulder height and back your ribs into your shoulder blades. If it's comfortable, round your upper back. Reach the fingertips forward and up. Good. Unbind, take your arms wide. Interlace your fingers behind your back the way that's unnatural. And lift your fist away from your hips. And then shake it out. So we did not get to the weight, the dumbbell, but for another day. I'm sure this was plenty. So thank you so much for exploring that awareness of shoulder stability, that connection of your shoulder blade to your rib cage is that stable joint of our spine, or not our spine, but our rib cage and our shoulder blade. So scapulothoracic